My solution for toy management is to get rid of as much as possible. You will find that kids play better without a lot of toys. So I found that to be the case. And it, of course, saves my sanity from always feeling I need to put all these toys back together. My name is Lisa, mother of 8 and creator of the blog and YouTube channel Farmhouse on Boone. Join me as I share with you my love for creating a handmade home from scratch cooking and a little mom and entrepreneur life along the way. Welcome back to the Simple Farmhouse Life podcast. Today, I'm going to be doing a solo episode. So in 2024, I've asked you all to submit your questions over at bit.ly/SFL, that's capitalized, questions in lowercase, so that I could, on every third episode, answer some frequently asked questions from you, give you some life updates and all that good stuff that I know some of the podcasts I like following along with. I enjoy the guests, but sometimes I just want to hear what's going on with the host. So I'm going to jump into some of those questions to give you a little update on what's been going on around here. We have been going on so many trips. So earlier this year, our dairy cow died, and we are going to replace the dairy cow right away, get a new one. But I decided instead that there were a few trips that we wanted to take as homeschoolers that we'd been putting off. And I thought, you know what? Let's try that out for a little bit. So in 5 months, I believe it was 5 months, maybe even, no. Yeah, in 5 months, we did 6 states. If you count Colorado that my kids and husband did, but the whole family did 5 different states. And we just got back from the last of those trips. And although it was so much fun, I am so done with traveling. Traveling with kids is cool. It's a experience. It's a memory, all of that good stuff. But it's also very hard and it's very difficult to stay in your flow of the way the kitchen works and the way you're eating healthy and the farm and the garden. It's all just really hard to do when you're on the go. So we just got back from Idaho. One thing that we got to do while we were there was record a podcast episode in Elisha and Katie Votberg's studio. So I was over on the Now That We're a Family podcast, got to meet them live. That was so much fun. Our kids and their kids went to the park together while we filmed. So that was really cool. I also spoke at the Modern Homestead Expo, so that's what actually brought us to Idaho. Now, sometimes I would maybe plan a trip like that by myself, but we decided instead, since we're on this travel kick, to do the whole family. So it was fun, but it was a lot of work. And before that, we went to Michigan. We love going there because it's just a 6-hour drive north for us to go to Lake Michigan. It's like a beach. That was really fun. I made a YouTube video about that. So we're back, and I don't have anything on the calendar for, a year. I think I'm going to go to the Modern Homestead Expo next year, but nothing out of state for a year, no airplanes. I'm just really glad. We're ready just to be home and not travel. It was fun. We got a lot of memories made. All right, let's dive into some of these questions. I looked over these a bit. Now, one that sometimes I'm like, should I address things like this or should I just leave them? But I am going to, in case anybody else was thinking about it. Somebody said, stop interrupting your guests. We want to hear what they have to say, and you interrupt or speak over them constantly. So I'm currently reading a book called Unoffendable. So I'm going to not get offended by this, but I did want to clarify that I have really bad internet. And some of you might not realize that because my wonderful podcast manager goes in and edits out all of the gaps. It makes for a really tricky conversation because just when you think the person is pausing and it's your time to interject, your opinion or your thoughts on that same matter in order to have a nice conversation that's back and forth, you end up interrupting people because you don't know that they're actually still talking because of the lag. So I will say that I'm sure sometimes I get excited to interrupt people without a lag, but also most of that can probably be accounted for that we have really poor internet. So it's a really big struggle with the podcast having such bad internet. It's been such a saga. We got Starlink and there is nowhere on our entire property where Starlink works. So all we have, I don't know what a comparable name would be where you are, but it's just really bad internet. We had good internet about a year and a half ago, and then they took down the water tower that supplied that internet to us. We tried all the things that you could possibly try. And so it's a bummer with my line of business having bad internet, but it is the current case. Now they are putting in something that's supposed to be really good, but it was supposed to be in last winter. So I'm not really holding my breath on that. But I did want you to know that if it sounds like I'm interrupting a lot, it probably is. And they might be interrupting me too. And if they're not, well, then it's all me and I'm sorry. But it could very well just be the case that our internet is really frustratingly bad. Okay, let's just go back and look at some of these. There'll be some motherhood questions, probably some business questions, probably some cooking questions. These just run the range because it's just an open Q&A with no topic associated with it. Can you talk about your go-to sick remedies for your kids for colds, flu, minor injuries, prevention, rash, etc.? So, for the most part, I don't really do much of anything when somebody is sick. I don't take their temperature. I can always tell if there's a fever. I usually try to do, lots of rest and fluids. Like, for example, Victor is currently just now getting over something. And so this just means that I'm nursing him around the clock, even overnight. Most of the night he's latched on, letting him sleep whenever he wants to sleep, not doing a scheduled nap time, just letting that go. But I'm also not giving him any fever reducing medicine or taking his temperature constantly, or to be honest, very much worrying about it. I have seen enough sicknesses come through this place to know that they last 1 or 2 days. Usually a fever will help it to be kicked. So I don't rush off to the doctor, rush off to the urgent care. I just know that in a couple of days, likely that fever will address the issue like it's meant to do and to regulate his body. So that is how I am currently working with that one. I know it's something going through the family and not just a teething issue or something because Luke also had it. So I guess I'm kind of holding my breath for the rest of us, but I don't get too worked up about sickness like I used to. When I was early in the motherhood game, I thought that every single thing the kids got, I needed to treat in some way, even if it was naturally. I needed to give them garlic or put some kind of essential oil on their foot or some kind of homeopathic remedy. Anymore, it usually just runs its course without any issue. We have not had to, until like last week, we have not had to use any conventional medicine, any antibiotics or anything in over a decade. My oldest daughter did have her wisdom teeth pulled and everything went great with that. The oral surgeon recommended antibiotics just right after she had it. And I declined because unless there was a infection that came about, I didn't want to just give her antibiotics and destroy her gut health for the chance that there would be an infection. So we decided to wait it out. Well, 4 weeks later, while we were in Michigan on our trip, her mouth that was already fully healed started swelling and she had some pain. Turns out it had healed over something way down in there. So not only did she have to get on antibiotics, but she had to go back and have it reopened all up back under anesthesia and cleaned. So anyways, that was an unusual circumstance that unfortunately we did have to use antibiotics. But also last week, or maybe, somewhere in the last week or two, it's all a blur because we were home for 5 days in between Michigan and Idaho. One of my sons who swims a lot in the summer said his ear was hurting. So I'm assuming it was some kind of swimmer's ear. He had what I presume to be an ear infection because it kept getting more and more painful. For that, I do actually do a remedy. I make up a garlic oil. So I put some minced garlic in some warm oil, let it sit, and then rub the oil around his ear. He didn't have pain within 24 hours. So we were able to treat that one naturally. Most of the time, we don't have to do anything at all. No garlic, no essential oils, no vitamins. We just kind of let him go. That one, since he had pain, we did do the garlic oil. That worked. And then we had to break our decade-long streak of no antibiotics for my daughter's infection. So I'm so thankful for modern medicine. I know whenever I talk about things like this, people tend to think that I'm just against it. No, I'm so glad that when my daughter has a mouth infection, we can rush off to the nearest 24-hour pharmacy, get her some antibiotics called in, and get that taken care of before it does something weird and goes somewhere worse. I'm so thankful for that. But I also have seen enough sicknesses and enough things. I know what's usual and what's unusual, and I don't have to rush to the doctor every time something happens. So I guess all that to say, I don't really have any go-to sick remedies. I wish I could say that all winter long we take elderberry. And I've had topics on this podcast about that. And I actually have Brad and Starla Walker from the elderberry farm coming back on very soon here. And I think that's such an amazing thing to do. I just get so many things going that I forget to be diligent on things like that. And ultimately, our immune systems are strong and able to handle whatever is coming our way without a lot of support most of the time. So typically I do nothing. Luke did nothing for his fever and his sickness that he was having that Victor also has. And if any of the other kids get it, it'll be the same thing, rest and fluids. If they're starting to get a bug that's lasting a long time and we have to move on to some like electrolyte drink, that's happened before. And then I think, if they get really dehydrated, that's when you'd want to go in. So it's just learning what to look for that's unusual. And when you've seen so many things, because kids get sick, they get bugs, they get viruses all the time, like what to expect and what looks unusual. I get so many questions about baby sleep, so many questions. And I do always tell you guys that I don't feel like I'm the best expert in it. Victor is almost 1 at the time of this recording, and he still wakes up a lot through the night. I was actually planning, and I keep putting this off, I was planning to sleep train him, but I was like, let's wait till after our trips. And then after the trip, he got a fever. So I'm still kicking that can down the road, but I do eventually plan around age 1 is typically when I will cut off the night nursings. I'll, basically I do some form of cry it out. So I check on them, make sure they're good, but ultimately won't nurse them around age 1. So we'll be doing that soon with Victor. I did a little bit younger with Theodore, which happens to be the reason why those two are so close together in age, because my night sleeping training with them does kind of affect fertility for me. And I know for most people it does, not everybody. But Theodore was such a bad sleeper that I rushed to it sooner, whereas I think it was around like 10 months. So it wasn't super soon. Whereas Victor, he still does decent overnight. We've had some bad nights here and there that I'm sure I've complained about on here, but for the most part, it's not too bad, which is what is making me push it off. So hopefully around age 1, if I don't keep pushing it off, I will at some point be sleeping through the night. But I know I still probably won't because I'm so used to waking up. And then as far as naps, because I got a question about naps as well. We usually go to naps down somewhere around 6 months. Now, some of my kids, I just wear on my back and they do a back wrap nap. But Victor, he's in a cool stage where he can do both. So when we are at the expo, I could put him on in the wrap and he would sleep. He also slept on my daughter's back. She's gotten really into baby wearing lately. So if any of you saw my daughter running around the Homestead Expo with a baby on her back, she learned that all by herself, and she still needs to teach me because I haven't actually figured that out. I've mostly just done the soft structured carriers on my back with the clips, but she actually has figured out how to do the woven wraps on her back, which is so neat. But Victor will fall asleep like that, but then he will also nap at home, which the way I do that is I just nurse him to sleep. When he's asleep, I lay him down. Now, the first couple of times that we did that, he woke up and cried, but then I just kind of pushed through, let him fall asleep. And now he's learned that I nurse him to sleep. I lay him down. He kind of stirs a little bit, but realizes, okay, this is sleepy time. So that's how we do it. Yes, I nurse him to sleep. I know that's not perfectly recommended, but it's always worked for me. And for me, having to train that association out of him, like not sleeping from nursing, is not worth what hassle it is, if that makes sense, because ultimately my kids sleep great at some point. When do you start giving your baby/toddlers raw milk? Usually whenever they are weaning. So at this point, Victor might take like a sip of smoothie. I wouldn't be against giving him raw milk, but he just also doesn't really need it because he nurses so frequently. He nurses a ton, probably more than a lot of my kids did at this age. So he doesn't really need it. Some of my kids started pulling back from nursing a little bit younger, and I'd give them a little bit of kefir smoothie, but I'm not giving them cups of milk till they're fully weaned. So whenever that is, again, I'm not against it. I would give a child raw milk, homemade formula from the beginning if nursing wasn't something that we were doing. So yeah, it's not really so much an age thing as a weaning thing. Okay, I got a question about our vent hood or lack thereof. So someone says that I just noticed after watching your videos that you don't have a vent hood. Knowing the way you cook, do you find that grease gets over everything on the shelves above your stove? I have not had a vent hood for a while, but finally getting one installed because we have open shelves next to the stove and surfaces and items up there get greasy so easily. Maybe it doesn't bother you, but curious how you deal with that. So it does. The stuff that's above our stove does get greasy. Even our light fixture above the stove gets greasy. It is one of those things that I am able to, for the most part, ignore. So for me, it's not a huge problem. I will say that occasionally I get frustrated that things don't look super clean. One thing that I've started to do is put more things up there that we're using constantly so that they get washed just because they're in the regular rotation. So, not decorative things. I actually just redid my shelves to take down anything decorative, well, except for like the top row where I won't really even notice if it's greasy because it's so far up there. But all the things that are in my eyesight, things like spices and grains and bowls and plates, things that I get down all the time, I give them a quick wipe, or we will actually serve food in them and then clean them so they get used on a regular daily basis and get cleaned. That's the one way that I deal with that. Other than that, I will say that it just doesn't bother me all that much. I'm sure some people watch my videos and like are really neat freaks and see how everything looks behind my stove. We even have soot behind my stove. I'm sure you've noticed. So it doesn't close fully and it's a vintage range and soot. I need to get this fixed so that that doesn't happen, but we have not. And so there's kind of like black and it's been going like that for years. So these kind of things ultimately just don't bother me that much. But if you really want your home to look very clean, I can understand what you're saying because it definitely does get greasy pretty regularly. I want to take a break from this episode to tell you about my favorite skincare company because they have organic, natural, non-GMO, non-toxic ingredients, and that is Toups & Co. It's spelled Toups like soups, Toups and co.com. They have everything from skincare to makeup. So I love their tonics and serum. My favorite serum is the Glow Serum. I love cleansing with their sea buckthorn cleansing oil and the charcoal bar. I usually, or at least a couple times a week, will do the cleansing oil followed by the charcoal bar to really give that deep cleanse. And then I love it for the makeups. So for many years, I've prioritized healthy makeup because our skin is our body's largest organ. It actually can affect our health with what we put on our skin. But it's hard, very difficult to find products that are quality, even though they're organic. Sometimes you would rather use your drugstore makeup because you feel like you look better with it. That is not the case with Toups & Co. So right now I have my full face of makeup on with Toups & Co. The foundation, the eyebrow pencil, the eyeshadow, the mascara, the bronzer, the blush, all of the things. And I feel like it actually looks like quality, good makeup, even though it is organic. And this small family-owned company prioritizes quality ingredients like tallow and olive oil. I have been happy with everything that I have gotten from Toups & Co. Toups & Co. is offering Simple Farmhouse Life listeners 10% off your order by using the code FARMHOUSE over at toupsandco.com. It'll also be linked in the show notes or the description box below. Again, toupsandco.com, use that code FARMHOUSE. Do you supplement with vitamin D or give your babies vitamin D while breastfeeding? So I do not. I don't have a strong opinion or any research backed say or opinion on this. I'm just currently saying that I don't do it. So I've never really looked too much into that. All right. This question, I guess it's not really a question. It's more of a suggestion. So toys, toy management, exclamation point. So I'm assuming this person is just asking what we do about toys. I shared a little bit about that on here. I do have a video over my YouTube channel. The thumbnail says minimal-ish, and it's a minimal home tour of a family of, I believe we had 9 at that time because I think I was pregnant with Victor. And I just shared everywhere, behind every cabinet, inside every drawer, what it actually looks like in here and how we are minimal-ish. We are what somebody described as essentialists. So we have what is essential. I would not call it minimalist because we do have 8 kids. We have a farm-ish. Right now we don't have a dairy cow, so it feels like sort of a farm. We're farm-ish and minimal-ish. So we have a lot of things, but I do try to constantly stay on top of the things that we're not using that I mostly feel like I'm just putting away and not really interacting with in any meaningful way. Toys would be one of those things. For example, right now at this exact moment, under my cabinet where is supposed to be like a desk area where we have printers and we have computers, there's a spot that we made a large open spot that you could pull a chair up to instead of the computer. Behind those doors right now, I noticed this morning, and I've been noticing it and just haven't dealt with it. There are 3 different remote control things, like a tank and a truck, several remotes, several cords, and I don't currently know what any of those go with. So that is something that is going to very soon be going into the back of the van because it has worn out its use. The kids are no longer playing with it. I try to Get things that, like, one tip that I would do, and I've done this, is buy your toys from thrift shops so that you can get them, let them live out their happy little life here while the kids enjoy them. And then when the kids forget about them, take them back there again. It's more sustainable that way. It's also easier on your pocketbook, because what happens, I think we so easily fall into this sunk cost fallacy thing where right now nobody's playing with those remote control things, and probably nobody even knows right now which remote goes with which thing. I don't really remember when we got them. Some point it sounded like a good idea, but it's never going to happen that the charger, the remote, and that remote control item is ever going to go back together in any way that is going to make it work for the kids. So I don't really want to get rid of it, because I think, well, what if, they want to play with that again? But in reality, they're never going to. And it's taking up all of that space where I could put a new robot vacuum, which is what I really want to put down there, but there's no space. So we get that sunk cost fallacy thing. And I'm usually pretty good in under about 6 months' time, if I notice somebody's playing with something, getting rid of it. So if I find that something is just involving me putting it away over and over again without anybody ever playing with it, that's when it's time for it to go. We do keep toys here so minimal. I have been in environments where there aren't minimal toys, like nurseries or some kind of playgroup or whatever. And I find that kids will, the first couple times they see something, play with it, really love it, enjoy it. But then they quickly mix up all the pieces, and they don't know how to put it back together again. And it requires a ton of effort from mom. And in reality, kids are good with playing with things that aren't as structured. Things like cardboard boxes, one-time use things that they can put together, enjoy, and then you can, do something with it, or allow them to use their creativity with, raw materials. We tend to do better with things like Legos and Duplos. We keep those. That's like the one toy that we always have around here. Usually some kind of pile of remote control stuff, because the kids really like it, but then have a hard time keeping it all together. So sometimes I'll just take all the remote control stuff and put it in a corner. And if at some point we can like sort through which is which, but usually it's just a short-lived thing around here. But Legos and Duplos, those raw material things where you don't need all of the pieces in order to still enjoy it, those are the things that we tend to keep, that I don't get rid of, because if you're missing one Lego, the whole thing isn't ruined. Those toys that require you to put them all back together again, those feel very stressful for me, because I feel like I'm in charge of it all. I need to keep it all together. And that's usually when I just will get rid of it. So my solution for toy management is to get rid of as much as possible. You will find that kids play better without a lot of toys. And there's been studies on this. Head over to Dawn from the Minimal Mom. She talks about this a lot, and she shares the actual science behind how kids play better whenever they have less toys. So I found that to be the case. And it, of course, saves my sanity from always feeling I need to like put all these toys back together. When my oldest daughter was a baby, I remember she had so many things that if one piece was missing, it would sort of bother me, thinking like, oh, where's that one piece that completes this set? I do not like to keep stuff like that. I don't need it nagging me constantly on, the missing pieces. One of my friends, she is really diligent about keeping a stash of toys in the basement or a closet, and then getting them out on rotation. So if you're struggling to get rid of them, just remove them from rotation. So recently in my kitchen, an example of this, I'm usually pretty ruthless with toys, but in my kitchen, I had a basket full of KitchenAid attachments I have not used in a year. One of them I haven't used in many years. One of them I use about once a year. And still, I'm struggling to get rid of them, because I do know that they go with the KitchenAid, which I know Dawn would have something to say about this. But I have a good spot for it in the basement, because I have a whole shelf devoted to extra kitchen doodads that we don't use regularly, but I could see us in some future event using. But I took it out of the regular rotation. So it's still not taking up pantry space. It's somewhere where I could easily access it and find it, but also I'm not seeing it all the time. So I think usually the recommendation from organizing things is placing something with the item that it belongs with, so you can actually find it again. That's what I find. I struggle. If I keep too much of anything and I don't have a designated spot, it doesn't really matter that I own it, because I'll never be able to find it again. So, anyways, after our trip, we had I got some new pack and play sheets, and I was holding them as I was trying to put away all of the stuff from the trip. And I was like, what do I do with these? Because if I just put these in Victor's drawer or stash it in my sheets drawer, I'll never remember that I have pack and play sheets. And my daughter was like, why don't you just put it in with the pack and play? I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. That makes sense. Very logical. So I struggle with all of this stuff too. And usually my solution with anything home related is to majorly minimize. I'm not skilled in organization. As you can see from these stacks of books and instruments behind me, that yeah, we're not super organized. We just have to minimize in order to keep this place not overwhelming. All right, let's talk a little bit about baby wraps. Somebody said, I really enjoyed your video comparing different baby wraps and have enjoyed my boba this last year. I have not seen anything for older kids though, and prefer to not need to purchase mini carriers for different ages and stages. Do you have any experience with carrying older and larger kids? Strollers don't work great for hiking, and I'm trying to look into buckle carriers versus soft wraps versus slings for the back. Thank you for your time. Sorry for the lengthy explanation. No, totally great. Actually, I have new insight to share on this because, like I said, my 13-year-old has gotten really into baby carrying. It's one of her new interests. All of our kids have very different interests, and one of hers is baby wearing. She watches video tutorials constantly. She learns how to do all these different fancy carries across the front. It's so cute. But she has really opened my eyes to how well a woven wrap works for all stages. Now, I've always loved a woven wrap. Pretty much after the newborn stage, the woven wrap, which is a non-stretchy wrap, unlike the boba, the Sally, and the Moby, which is a stretchy wrap, works wonderfully for the newborn because it holds them so close and tight. After they're a certain weight, they really need more support. I mean, I've used those wraps for a year plus. It's been totally fine. But I find that I personally am more comfortable with more support. And those woven wraps last for years and years. So it's a non stretchy wrap, very high quality, heavy material, but also breathable and not hot. So obviously it's summer right now. We're still using that woven wrap constantly. It's the only wrap I bring with me. And because it's not stretchy, you can wear it on the front and the back. You can also wear it on the side. So if you're trying to, the other day, my daughter did almost like you would do with a ring sling, kind of like a sling carry on the side. Great option there. So if you want to only invest in one thing, you want to keep it very minimal, I think a large, very long woven wrap. Now, woven wraps come in sizes. I have a size 5, and I struggle to get that one wrapped around my back because it's not enough fabric. Now, my daughter can do it just fine, but she's tiny. I do better with a size 6 or 7 in order to do all the different carries that you see on YouTube. Now, since you already do have the boba, you could invest instead or alternatively in something like a Kinder pack. I love the Kinder pack for, I don't know how old you're trying to go. Now, if you're trying to go up to like age 4 or 5, one of those big hiking ones that when you take it off, it's like a backpack and it has the little thing that comes out so you can sit it down and it doesn't fall over, almost like a folding chair type of apparatus on it. I'd probably recommend that if you're talking about an older kid. We still have one like that we take everywhere for Luke to carry, our almost 3-year-old. So I usually do the baby, or my daughter in this case, and he will do the almost 3-year-old in that big, hefty, like hiking type carrier. But if you're talking about under 2, anything from like probably like 6 months to 2, the Kinder pack would be really good for that, or a woven wrap. And I have seen these ladies on YouTube use those woven wraps, especially if they're long. Like if you're doing an older kid, get a larger size for years. We saw somebody doing a 5-year-old on her back with one of those. You can tie it any way you want. And since it's not stretchy, they won't, they can't like arch back and stretch it out. It's very secure. So it's a little bit of a learning curve, but also very, very flexible, which is great if you don't want to learn a whole lot of things. And then you can distribute the weight really nicely because you can spread the fabric across your shoulders and back, making it really comfortable as well. Okay, someone says, what is your bath time routine for babies, toddlers, and younger children? We spend most days inside so they don't get super dirty, but I can't help but feel like I'm failing as a mom because I can't seem to get into a better routine other than bathing my toddlers once a week. Everything that I read says to bathe them every night. Every night? What are you reading? No, I definitely, well, I don't have a routine. We kind of just go by, and I know like all the other large family moms are like, yes, I understand. Like, well, maybe some of you are super organized, but for me, we go by, you look really dirty. You need to take a bath kind of thing. There's no routine. It is actually better for their microbiome to bathe less. So I would not recommend every night by any stretch because you're washing off a lot of, what's like building up. You're not trying to live a super overly sanitized life. That's something that I learned in the last several years, that we try to over sanitize things. When I'm making milk kefir and sourdough and water kefir and sauerkraut, I'm going exactly opposite of what some conventional thinking might tell me. Put this in the fridge, it's going to spoil. I'm literally trying to bring the bacteria out in order to support my gut health. Now, I'm not sure that's a direct correlation. I don't know if like that completely, is like the best example here about bathing, but I have heard some evidence that it's better to not bathe all the time. Now, again, you could swing on the other side of that ditch now and think, oh, I should never bathe my child for their gut microbiome. I can tell you that right now in the summer, my kids are bathing really often because they're so dirty. So I'm just going off of, there's no routine, but you come in, I look at your feet, I look at you from head to toe, and I think you need to take a quick bath before bed. It's not necessarily in the schedule, but I can just see that it needs to happen. I sent all 4 of my older boys through the bathtub last night. I'm like, okay, you need to all just, here's some soap, scrub your feet and scrub every part of you. Because my kids play outside a lot and run around barefoot. So I'm not telling you to worry about bathing them too much. We also do the pool. And I know that some people have criticized me and said, how could you let your kids go to the pool? They're destroying their gut health. I'm just not going to get that deep into worrying about every little thing. We are going to enjoy summer swimming. We just are. If somebody does not have a saltwater pool and the only thing we have is chlorine, I'm totally fine with it. And then that also probably counts for some baths as well. So we're just going on a when they're dirty basis. I would not feel guilty or that you're failing as a mom. I remember thinking about these things whenever I had my first couple kids, trying to wonder, like, how often am I supposed to do these certain things? Really worrying about that. And I can tell you that now that's not really something I worry about. I just kind of go by how they smell and how they look. And I think that you'll be just fine to do that as well. All right, I'm just going to answer one more. And then again, don't forget to head over to bit.ly/capital S, capital F, capital L, questions in lowercase, in order to submit more questions so that I can continue to make these every third or so episode. I don't know, not to do this throughout the rest of the year, but it's been really fun answering some questions that are directly from a lot of you. Okay. Hi, Lisa. I would love to hear why you try to avoid GMOs. I'm a plant breeding PhD student who works with CRISPR, so I'm genuinely curious about how come GMOs are perceived as bad in the homesteading community, whether it is a health-related or more political reason. On the other hand, the majority of GMO crops grown in the US are mostly found in processed foods, so I definitely don't encourage people to eat a ton of those. Thank you. Yeah, I've actually had this discussion with people in your line of work because I can understand how, from your perspective, that would be puzzling because they are, as far as like macronutrients, they are identical, I'm pretty sure. And I feel so unqualified to speak on certain things, and this is one of them. Because what happens is over the years, I read several articles or several, I hear things in passing and I talk to people. And then I have these solidified beliefs that right now, can I explain it back to you exactly why I believe that? But I will tell you that it is definitely for health reasons, not political reasons, at least as far as I know. From my perspective, it's more for health reasons. So typically something that is GMO is developed in order to be able to withstand certain pesticides. And so it can have higher concentrations of that. Also, when something has been so changed from the original, it does make sense that our bodies would struggle to identify what it is and actually make use of it. So one thing that I've learned over the years by reading about ancient practices of nutrition, such as Sally Fallon's book, Nourishing Traditions, just because something has a certain nutrient or vitamin in it doesn't necessarily mean your body can do anything with it. It has to actually assimilate that, which I know you can agree with. So this would be an interesting discussion for you and I to actually have, because I would want to hear more from your perspective why you think that they aren't bad. But that's typically why I've avoided them, is knowing that they're not so different, just slightly different from what they're originally intended to be. And our body's struggling to know what to do with that and to use those nutrients. So those are my thoughts before actually sitting down and deep diving into GMOs at this current time. I'm just going off of my beliefs have been solidified over so many interactions and articles over so many years that at this point, it's just in my pattern and habit to not use them. And as you said, so many things that include GMOs, almost everything is a processed food. So it's really not difficult to avoid them when you're cooking from scratch and eating more clean and buying whole ingredients. It's very easy to avoid GMOs. All right, well, I hope that you enjoyed this episode of the Simple Farmhouse Life podcast, random as it was. Keep submitting those questions so that we can do more random episodes like this, and I will see you in the next episode.